Would you like to 100x your smartphone internet speeds? Well, special guest, technology expert John Miley from the Kiplinger Letter joins me to discuss what the future holds for 5G technology, what companies stand to benefit, and what the impact may be on consumers and the economy. Welcome to Investor in the Family Radio, a podcast about learning to invest. My name is Brian Bain, and I'm your host. At Investor in the Family Radio, we believe that every dollar and minute we spend is an investment in something, and together we want to make the best investments that we can. So thank you so much for joining us. And remember, our goal is to help you learn to invest financially and in all of life. You can always find more at investorinthefamily.com and subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, Stitcher, and the Google Play Store. And as always, if you liked my detailed show notes from today's episode, simply text the word Family Notes. That's one word, Family Notes, to the number 44222, or visit investorinthefamily.com and sign up, and we'll be sure to get you taken care of. Do you like shopping for insurance? Of course you don't. It can be a terrible experience, especially when it comes to life insurance. If you have loved ones that you want to take care of financially after you're gone, then you may want to consider term life insurance, and Policy Genius is the easiest way to get insurance, period. At Policy Genius, you can figure out what you need, compare the top policies, get covered, and save. If you want to save on term life insurance, go to investorinthefamily.com/policygenius. That's investorinthefamily.com/policygenius for access created specifically for Investor in the Family listeners. I do get a small commission if you use my link, which costs you nothing. It's a win-win. Visit investorinthefamily.com/policygenius for more info and have the most enjoyable insurance shopping experience you've ever had. And I hope you enjoyed today's interview with John Miley. Well, hey, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you with us, and I'd love to get started. If you don't mind giving our audience just a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
Sure thing, yeah. I'm an associate editor at the Kiplinger Letter. We're located in Washington, D.C. I cover mainly technology and telecom. One of the things we do a little bit differently is our weekly newsletter, and then now our online service. We actually do a lot of forecasts. So we're all journalists, but when we report and research, we're trying to say what's going to happen next. Things to look out for in the news, regulations to look out for, and then specifically for me, what technologies are coming down the line and how they're going to impact businesses and consumers too. But so that's a little bit of how we might differ a little bit from news services in general.
Primarily on the forecasting aspect.
For sure, yeah.
Right. So how long have you been with Kiplinger?
I've been there 6 years.
Awesome.
With Kiplinger, yep.
Awesome. Yeah, and is it inside the Kiplinger offices, is it like a Kiplinger? Like, is it like a big deal one way or the other as far as how it's pronounced, or does no one care?
I think that we tend to correct people. It's Kiplinger, but a lot of people say Kiplinger, which is it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to people to wonder how to pronounce it.
So it's a really soft. It's not like a hard J sound at the end. It's a softer, like kind of glide over the G. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we wanted to get on the show today. There's a number of topics that you and I were excited to discuss, but right now we wanted to spend some time talking about 5G specifically, and we're going to talk about what that means and what that looks like. Obviously, most people listening to this podcast most likely have a smartphone, and up in the top left of the smartphone, it's going to say LTE or maybe 4G. And so then we hear this term 5G. Can you talk to us about what 5G even is?
Yep. And I think it's getting a lot more press in the last year or two. I think the first time I mentioned it specifically in our publication was November 2014. But 5G is basically the next generation of wireless service, of cellular service. So you have 2G, which is voice and text messaging. Actually, the first iPhone came out, and I believe it only had 2G. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it had Wi-Fi and 2G. Then you came out soon after. Then it had 3G, and 3G was a little bit faster data. You could start to stream video. I know my iPhone 4, I had 3G for a while, so maybe 5 to 10 megabits per second. Then you have the 4G, which is very fast streaming video, fast data, tens of megabits per second, maybe 100 megabits per second. And that's what we're in now. Pretty easy to stream video when you have good service on a cellular network. And then 5G, there's obviously faster speeds. So they want 100 times faster speeds, or 10 to 100 times faster speeds. up to gigabits per second, which was 1 gigabit would be 1,000 megabits per second. The average cellular speed now is 20 megabits per second, to put that in perspective. So much faster, a network that can handle a lot more devices, and not only smartphones, but connected sensors. Today's networks wouldn't be able to handle it. Gartner, the market researcher, they do forecasts of some 20 billion connected devices compared to whatever today is. I think it's something like 6 billion, or just a huge amount of more connected devices.
And connected devices would be like the wearable trend that's developing.
Yeah. And then the other sensors you would see maybe in agriculture to track moisture, or you would include cars, connected cars. You would include drones. You would include sensors in factories connected to maybe the automation robotics to see if it's some problem occurs and track that. So a lot more connected things, a lot more capacity for stuff that's connected to the web, basically. The other thing too is super fast latency. In other words, low lag time. So very like a snappy internet. Now that matters for a lot of real time stuff. If you want to do remote surgery, for instance, or if you want to have a driverless car that needs to stop when someone's walking across the street, you can't have lag time. So they want to get under a millisecond. So basically 5 times faster, lower latency. A millisecond is 1/1000th of a second. So a network that can do that. And then one of the other key features of what they're trying to do is ultra reliability. So the network, it doesn't go down that much. There's different ways to stay connected to a wireless network. The way I tend to think about it too is, especially if you look 5 or 10 years into the future, sort of a ubiquitous connectivity. So you're always connected to the internet. Now I understand it doesn't sort of click on like a switch where it just happens. This is going to be sort of the future happens unevenly. Probably major cities, dense urban areas, there's rural applications, but you're seeing a lot more push for this 5G, even into next year with major trials by Verizon and AT&T. So there's a lot of work happening now that you can look at. But yeah, in short, it's the next generation of cell technology, cellular wireless, that's going to be different in a lot of major ways. Let's see. I don't think he's prone to too many overstatements, but the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Tom Wheeler, has called 5G a revolution. So the idea that it is going to be different in how we connect to the web. So there's some interesting things about it that contrast to what we've had in the past.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you mentioned that AT&T and Verizon are looking at running major trials next year in 2017. But so obviously it's not here yet. But we're defining a lot of, or giving, I guess, maybe estimations of what capacity and details may define what 5G may look like. So when AT&T is working on 5G, then Verizon is working on 5G, how similar, I mean, is it, if you went in one shop in AT&T, then a shop in Verizon, would it be like, oh, they're dealing with the same thing? Or is it like, well, this is really AT&T doing their version of what's next and Verizon their version of what's next?
For the most part, it'll be the same. And it's going to be, I mean, I think they're going to be using it differently. But you have these big standards bodies that I try to keep track of, some of like ITU or 3GPP, I think is what it is. But just the ones that are hammering out what are the actual technical specifications of this? What type of antennas are going to go into smartphones? What spectrum is going to be used? What radio waves will be used for how this is? So you're seeing a lot of those standards bodies hammering those out, and say AT&T or Verizon, the early trials are sort of tapping into that. And a lot of what I was talking about initially in terms of 10 to 100 times faster, et cetera, those are the goals that a lot of these tech companies and tech groups have set out, and they're sort of based on their best idea of what the technology is going to be. And what you see for, like, say, the Verizon trials and AT&T trials, the one thing I would point out, you can have some of these things done before the standards are hammered out. So you can have one of the things that Verizon is going to be testing is sort of fiber fast speeds wirelessly. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about millimeter wave spectrum. So basically tapping into airwaves that I think they've said in the past, they were like, well, these airwaves, you can't really use anything with them. They're too hard for wireless engineers to figure out that they're even useful. So there's all these airwaves that are available. But basically, you can send speeds very short distances. There's other limitations, but you can get up to gigabits per second. So in a sense, you wouldn't need to have fiber wired all the way to your home or business to get fiber speeds. You could have something 100 or 200 meters away and then put some antenna on the rooftop or outside the house to get those speeds. So those are the trials you'll see. But yeah, in general, I think there is a concerted effort to have your smartphone work on 5G, to have all the devices work on it versus like an AT&T versus Verizon type thing.
Yeah, for the network to have meaning, that would make sense. There would be a lot of uniformity, I guess. So tell me, what would rolling something out like this look like? For example, when 4G was rolled out, how big of a process was that? And would 5G be similar? Would it be bigger, harder? What do you have in that area?
So some of the forecasters or some of the market researchers that I've listened to or looked at or researched said it might roll out faster than 5G, which rolled out pretty rapidly anyway. The difference for this, and it's noted a lot by the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC here in DC, is that it's going to require a lot more small antennas. So versus the big cell towers, a lot of towns and cities don't like them in their backyard. The way these airwaves are going to work, they're very fast, but they're very short distance. So you need a lot of the small antennas on rooftops, on buildings, in towns. So they say, I guess the way they phrase it is like a density of these small antennas everywhere. So in terms of how they build it out, I mean, that's going to be a challenge on multiple reasons. One of them being a lot of towns and cities don't like the way those things look. It's hard to get permits, the zoning issues, stuff like that. And you already hear the commissioners at the FCC and others at other companies sort of concerned about the not in my backyard aspect of that. So that's one of the challenges. It's a thing to point out for 5G is that you're going to see a lot more of those. I guess the small antennas, pretty small though, the way they're being built now. But you're obviously still going to see more fiber optic cabling, which isn't the high tech stuff. It's digging trenches, it's putting lines on telephone poles, it's things like that.
So you mentioned antennas as opposed to towers. Would that mean like an antenna that would be something like a couple of feet in size or yards, or something you could put on a telephone pole, or are we talking a lot bigger than that?
Yeah, a couple of feet.
Okay.
Basically, you could put it on a storefront in a city. You can put it on a rooftop in a city. AT&T just announced something called AirGig, which they want to do. They want to put these antennas on the top of telephone poles.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So you obviously need a source of power, but if they're on a telephone pole, it's sort of you already have that
right there.
Infrastructure ready to go, and then you can connect them a few hundred meters apart through those fiber fast wireless airwaves.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. I would imagine them going out and putting a lot of those little towers on existing telephone poles, because it'd be a lot more discreet and not as you could still have the not in my backyard type idea, but I could see people being not as mindful of it. Because I mean, I can look out my window and there's a big transformer sitting on a tower. Yep. Why would I care if there was a little antenna on it too, you know? Well, tell me this. So this is obviously a major trend. You've mentioned AT&T and Verizon, which would obviously be major players here. What other kind of companies do you see this impacting, all the way down from smaller companies that could really benefit from this trend over the next few years to the big guys like AT&T and Verizon?
Yeah, you have AT&T, you have Verizon, then you obviously T-Mobile and Sprint are the other guys that are obviously the four big carriers very interested in this and aggressive in this, because I'm trying to see the other stat. Something like, last year the networks, the four nationwide carriers invested $33 billion. So they're investing a lot of money in building
cumulatively this. $33 billion.
Yeah. Probably go up a little bit. In some ways, this could be, there's some advantages in cheaper equipment for this. But some of the other guys, I mean, anyone that's making some of the underlying like wireless tech, when you think of Ericsson, Hawaii, let's see, they make some of the wireless antennas. You have Samsung.
You said, Hawaii, out of China, right?
Yeah, you have Samsung that's developing a lot of the software and technology and doing a lot of the research on this. There's other companies like CommScope, Juniper Networks, Cisco, sort of the routers and networking people of the world. Qualcomm, Intel. No, I guess I could say when you look at like a Qualcomm or Intel, when you think about this too, antennas or the chipsets in your smartphones, you obviously can't use a 4G smartphone with 5G. So you have to look at too that as we move forward in the networks, it's another reason for people to upgrade their smartphones.
Right. Yeah.
So when you look at Apple or Samsung or I guess, Google came out with a new smartphone too. Phones that can take advantage of 5G sort of have an edge, especially if you can come up with applications that can harness like what you're trying to do with 5G. You even see a company like Facebook that's using, I mentioned those millimeter waves, basically the new airwaves they're tapping, but Facebook is working on actually launching like Wi-Fi infrastructure. So they can install Wi-Fi in dense cities and then beam it out to people to use. The one thing I would mention too for these operators, it's interesting to watch them do this because there's some people are actually questioning, will the operators be able to profit from this? Because a lot of the profits from online sort of are going to the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world versus the people who are trying to build this. So you're going to see a race from Verizon and AT&T to figure out, one of the phrases people use is, how can they not be like a dumb pipe, like just an internet pipe? How can they add like value added services and things like that, which I think they should be able to do. For that. That questions forward.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that was going to be one of my next questions, mentioning all those different companies that could be creating underlying wireless tech. And you distinguished where you've got people working on the hardware side of things, then more on the online software type side of things as well. And so I guess there is a real concern. You mentioned on Verizon and AT&T. Do you see those other companies as any like, man, this is going to be really big for these people? Or is like, it's going to be helpful for all these companies, but it's really going to be just continuing on business as usual? Or I guess for the industry as a whole, it'll probably be a nice overall surge for everyone, probably.
Yeah. It's a surge for everyone. It's just like, if you talk about like drones tapping into 5G or driverless cars or like any type of like outdoor mobile robotics. But ultimately, if you're looking at this too, I do think like the Facebooks of the world, the Googles of the world, that just benefit from people being connected. If you talk about people being connected even more, where they can stream a 4K video, or they can watch, they can do virtual reality outdoors, untethered anywhere. That benefits someone like a Facebook or someone selling virtual reality goggles like Facebook Oculus or HTC. Or you have the Pokemon Go trend. You have some of the augmented reality. Now, what if you could, with 5G, just tap into things that use a ton more data and that are much more complex? That would benefit basically apps makers that would, or like a Facebook or like a Google that could feature things like that. I guess one of the things I would point out like quickly for the operators, the Verizon, the AT&T, the T-Mobile, the Sprint. And it's one of the things. I'm in DC, and usually it's not too interesting, but I think investors should consider the net neutrality rules by the FCC. Those went into effect in June of 2015, and there's been basically utility style rules, sort of the ability of the FCC to say no fast lanes on the internet, all traffic must be treated equally. How will this impact the abilities for these wireless operators to make money, to add value-added services when 5G comes along?
Because obviously that's not the legislation they wanted, obviously.
No, they didn't want it at all. Even the Ciscos of the world, the infrastructure companies, didn't want it because they thought it would dim the investment outlook.
Because their idea would have been to basically be able to levy some kind of tax or fee on like Google and Netflix for the really high traffic users to be able to make more money, essentially. But the net neutrality rule said they can't do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's some of what they wanted to do. But even like from a consumer side, they would love to let consumers pay more for a faster connection to use a virtual reality service, or on the wireless side to have different types of services that they can pay more to have if you're like a gamer and you want a super fast connection. So even the consumers, so they could get it from both sides, whether businesses paying more. There is a little bit of leeway within the net neutrality rules. There's a special waiver process if you're a internet provider to let some of these quote unquote, they call it paid prioritization, but I guess you could say the fast lane type things happen. But it's really unclear how much that would happen. I mean, even T-Mobile has 0 rating. So in other words, that you can watch mobile video and it doesn't count towards your data cap. I just think these issues are going to be even more prevalent when you hit 5G. And I guess I would say for investors, it'll be interesting to watch what the wireless carriers can do in terms of money making services in terms of operating their network. Obviously, you see like some of these. You saw AT&T buy DirecTV. Verizon has their own video service, so they're sort of pushing into their own video and services, and that's one of the ways they're like looking toward the future.
Yeah, I guess they're really pushing to figure out a way to create their own content and value they can deliver over their pipelines to avoid the dumb pipe type idea. That makes sense. Well, hey, John, this has been fantastic. You packed a lot into a really short amount of time, so I appreciate you coming on the show today and helping all of us get a better feel for what's coming with 5G and who may be impacted by it.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed the interview with John Miley. Remember, you can get full show notes with links and other details at investorinthefamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, or the Google Play Store. And if you want to receive my summary sheet from today's show, simply text the word family notes, one word, family notes, to the number 44222, or visit investorinthefamily.com and sign up, and we'll be sure to get you taken care of. This is Brian, and thanks for joining the family. The information and opinions contained on this podcast are for educational purposes only. The information does not consider the economic status or risk profile of any specific person. The information and opinions expressed should not be construed as investment trading advice and does not constitute an offer or an invitation to make an offer to buy and sell securities.